Tell us your mentality, man, about playing offensive tackle. I mean, you have the potential, just to be absolutely elite.
Damn, go ahead and share your thoughts on the thesis.
Yeah, baby. That's what we do. We are the Buckeyes. What up, Buckeye Nation? What up, Buckeye Nation? Welcome to the Buckeye Boys, where we talk college football with real fans. I'm Devin. Excited to be here tonight. Got a good show planned for you guys. Going to dive into some Matt Patricia rumors, some workout buzz, and a new coach being added to this staff. We'll also dive a little bit into this coaching staff. Are there still some moves yet to be made? And talk about this offseason and what's going on inside the Woody. Before we dive into that, guys, I need you to do something for me. And this sounds a little repetitive from time to time, so I just want to ask you guys, please hit that like button. But for real, if you haven't hit it yet and you're watching, it's free, easy to do, goes a long way for the channels as well, both Buckeye Scoop and the Buckeye Boys. Hit the subscription button if you haven't done that. Same thing, free, goes a long way. Super chats are open. You guys got any questions, man? I don't always get them in the chat. I get moving along. It's hard to watch the chat at the same time. So if you got a question and you really want it answered, put it in a super chat. They all go to help good causes out. So do us that favor if you got a good question. Also, it doesn't even have to be good, by the way. Just any question. Pop her in there. We'll get it answered for you. Download the Spreaker app if you haven't already. Apple Podcast as well. Give us a like on that one, the Scoop channel. And the Scoop message board is always rocking and rolling. We're going to be diving into a nugget that the helping technician put on there today in today's show. Let me bring on my helper for today, VB Coach. What up, VB Coach? How you doing, brother?
Great. How are you?
Doing good, man.
Good.
It's always good, right? When you have the time and the energy to get on and just talk about Buckeye football with a friend. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Like there are some better things I could think of doing right now, but in the grand scheme of things, we could be doing a lot worse things right now. Wouldn't you
Oh,
agree?
yeah. Yes, definitely. And I'm here in Ohio, so like I've told you, the weather has not been great here. So
Yeah.
stuck inside. So if I'm going to be stuck inside, doing this is the best thing for me. That's for sure.
Yeah. Well, I'm in Florida, and I don't
Mhm.
want to say too much because last time I said a bunch, it got really cold here and everything, but I'll just leave it at that. I'm in Florida. The weather's okay. It's
Mhm.
nothing crazy to write home about. But anyway, we got Buckeye football stuff going on, man. We got our defensive coordinator that got hired last year, Matt Patricia, did such a good job this year that people are getting nervous that he's going to bounce, leave up out of here. We saw Chip Kelly come in as the offensive coordinator. We saw him win a national title, and even inside the Woody, they thought he was staying. Nobody thought he was going. That was the plan. That was the agreed upon plan. But the Raiders came in with such a huge number that he could just not turn it down. Right. And now we come to this Matt Patricia thing, which I will remind people about a month ago, I reported Matt Patricia is staying. And I told you guys, if you guys had the information that I had, you would be reporting the same thing. So I am still standing firm on that. Just double checked it again before I started the show. And right, the sources have confirmed that, Matt Patricia has every intention of staying on here as a defensive coordinator. But there are some rumors out there, specifically linked to the Raiders,
Mhm.
that Matt Patricia could be waiting for a bigger contract. Nevada said in the earlier show with him and B. Moses that he, in fact, is under a 3-year contract with the Buckeyes at $2.5 million a year with some very big incentives, like a
Mhm.
35% incentive. You win a national title, you get a 10% incentive just to make the playoffs. You know what I'm saying? That's a pretty big 10% of $2.5 million is a good chunk of change. So
Yeah. What do you mean?
he also loves coaching here. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So I don't have anything new on that other than those rumors are just fear based off of what has happened in the past and people expecting an announcement from him. technically there's no announcement needed. He's already under contract. Do I know if Ohio State is going to up that offer and maybe give him a bigger contract? I don't know. All I know is Matt Patricia loves where he's at. There are several people around Matt Patricia that are fully expecting him to remain here as a defensive coordinator. Talk a little bit. Talk a little bit about that, VB.
Yeah. I expect him to stay, and that's no inside information. Just looking at that guy coach this year and how much he loved it as compared to other years, how he looked. I think everybody notices he's lost a bunch of weight. Like that guy has made a lifestyle change and stuff, and he's just happier and healthier than he used to be. The Chip Kelly example is a great one because I think if I'm Coach Day, I'm saying, hey, Chip was here a year ago and he left. Guess what? He's already at another job. And that's the one thing about going to the NFL is, you're hitching your wagon, especially if you're a coordinator, to that head coach. And the Raiders organization has proven that may not last very long. The coach this year lasted less than a year. So, and the one thing about being at Ohio State is you want your coordinators to be wanted for those jobs. That means they're doing a great job. If nobody wants your coordinator, that's probably not so good. So I expect him to stay. I would be shocked if he left. However, I will also say coaching is a business, unfortunately. With what you do for a living, with what I do for a living, if somebody, we don't ever expect to leave. I'm not expecting to leave my job tomorrow. I'm sure you're not. But if somebody tomorrow called you and said, hey, I will triple your salary, you're probably gone. So
yeah.
I don't know what it's like to make 2.5 million or 4 million. So to me, they're the same, something that I can't relate to. But if somebody was offering that kind of money, I can see it. So I tell people it's a business. So don't, money changes everything. So, and when he, a month ago, I'm sure he was staying because a month ago, did we even know the Raiders needed to do head coach? And then after the Super Bowl, we find out Kubiak's going to be their head coach. So, this is all in flux right now. So, Kubiak didn't know he was going to be the Raiders head coach. So a lot of moving parts there.
Yeah, there is. And with as crazy as college football is, I feel like in today's day and age, I mean, we could have this same conversation about any coach anywhere because there is so much movement. You really never know, right? We could have this conversation about Ryan Day, right? Is Ryan Day going to be the head coach here? You know what I'm saying? Somebody could come in and offer the dude $40 million. I mean, dude, football is so wild anymore that, right, you can only be so sure about is a coach coming back, is a recruit signing here, is a player entering the portal, is he not entering the portal? Like the day and age of, you know what I mean, getting even inside information and that information being good, right, is getting harder and harder because, like I said, the information I have on Matt Patricia, it's, you can't get much better info on that except for there are so many moving parts in the game anymore. And I feel like this is more of again, not that there needs to even be an announcement. He's already under contract, but I feel like the fact that there's not an announcement is probably more of, like you said, the business move on his agent's part, because you brought up how happy Matt Patricia looks. Dude's already won a couple Super Bowls. He's already experienced the NFL. You see his lifestyle change. You see how happy him and his family are. You see how much these players love him. Not that all those things are concrete and make coaches stay, but they are factors, right, that lead into that. So barring any crazy offers, and I personally think they would have to be crazy. I don't think you're going to get Matt Patricia away for $500,000 or $1 million more a year. That's just my opinion. Would you be able to get me away from my job for $1 million more a year? Yeah. Where you want me to sign? I'll go do it. But, people live in different situations. But either way, the buzz on the Buckeye Boys end, as far as inside info, is that Matt Patricia is going to be the defensive coordinator here. Of course, right, there is always that what if statement that can be made where somebody can come in and make a ridiculous offer. But even inside the Woody, they are operating as if Matt Patricia is operating as if he is going to be here next year, even with the portal pickups that were made, even some of these recruiting decisions that are being made. Matt Patricia is involved in those. So those are all things pointing towards Matt Patricia remaining here. So, right, we're talking about coaches. We're talking about what Ryan Day, the moves he has made in the offseason. He hired Cortez Hankton from LSU, wide receivers coach. He hired Arthur Smith, the Steelers offensive coordinator, ex NFL head coach as well. He just made another move. He hired a special teams coordinator. He just hired a tight ends assistant coach from Samford. It was the QB coach named Thomas Morton. He replaced Wendy Laurent, who got hired last year as the tight ends assistant coach. He was a QB analyst at Auburn in 2024. He was a graduate assistant in Troy in 2023. Graduated from Southern Miss in 2020. He also was a quarterback there, and was recently at Samford when he was the QB coach. They were a big air raid tempo style offense. So that's what he is geared towards, that style offense, those type of things. Again, assistant tight end coach. So not that the dude is going to have a bunch of say in how things are ran, but you do have a different perspective in this VB coach. And then I do want you to address, how big of an impact can an assistant tight end coach make on a team?
Yeah. Off the top of my head, this move looks like one where they're bringing in a young, smart offensive guy. It used to be, you were limited as to how many guys you could have on the staff. Now that's kind of not the case anymore. You can have all these assistant coaches, analysts, or whatever. I mean, we're seeing guys that used to be head coaches in college being an analyst somewhere. And, that was unheard of 10 years ago. So you're loading your staff up. And so, in college coaching, it's a lot of who you know. And you go to your conventions when you're there. But here's something I tell kids all the time. You're going to get an offer. If I have a kid that's a D1 kid, and I said, you're probably going to get an offer from this school, and you're like, well, let's say it's a MAC school or something like that. And you're thinking, well, I'm bigger than the MAC or whatever. I'm not. And I say, but what you don't know is if, that position coach at the MAC school might be a position coach at a Big Ten school next year. And because of the coaching changes and everything, and who and what and everything. So there's so much movement right now. I mean, think about it. We're looking at an Ohio State team that has 2 NFL coordinators on their staff. Yeah. It is weird how guys are moving down. That used to not be the case. Everybody's goal was to move up. And I still think their goal is to move up so that they don't have to recruit. That's what coaches hate the most, especially recruiting your own players at the end of each season. But so what you need is a guy like this assistant tight ends coach to help you out, because I don't know how much recruiting Matt Patricia wants to do, or Arthur Smith. How much have they done in their career? It can't be that much.
Yeah. Yeah. You talk about the assistant coach and filling in for recruiting and stuff. An interesting move that Ryan Day made last offseason was bringing in essentially 3 offensive line coaches. Obviously, Tyler Bowen got hired as your head offensive line coach. Then, Marcus Johnson got hired as an assistant offensive line coach, who the year previous had his own offensive line. He was the offensive line coach at a school. Then Charlie Dickey got hired as well. Again, a coach that has, Oklahoma State, I believe, was the offensive line coach there for quite some time, known for that. This offseason, Marcus Johnson left, right, went to be an offensive line coach elsewhere. Charlie Dickey is still in the room. So as of now, you got Tyler Bowen and you got Charlie Dickey in the offensive line room. Is Ryan Day going to make another hire there? Speak to your opinion on the move to bring 3 in. There was a conversation this offseason or during the season. Is this too many, right? Like head offensive line coaches in one room, or are you getting taught different things? I mean, that seems like it would be hard. I mean, at first I loved it, and then I start thinking about it. I'm like, is that too many? And on that note, Should and do we think Ryan Day is going to go get another offensive line coach to fill the Marcus Johnson role where he left?
Mm-hmm. I think if he finds the right person, he'll do it. You're going to have your national convention, coaching conventions coming up. All those young guys and stuff, they go there with the resume in hand and they're trying to network and everything. So I think if there's a hire, it'll be that kind. I don't see them bringing in a guy that was the head offensive line coach at a Power 5 school happening, because there is that thing of there's too many Chiefs and not enough Indians saying there, and Bowen's now in his second year. It's not, you're not dealing with the unknown. He knows all of these guys coming back. He knows what they can and can't do. He knows what they need to work on. Whereas you were bringing in a brand new line coach that didn't know any of the kids. So how, that probably made sense to bring in a lot of minds. But, and I think, do you break that up? Is one guy coaching the centers, one guy coaching guards, one guy coaching the tackles? How does that work? And when there's a decision to be made, who is making the call?
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's when you're in week 9 or 10 and you've been working 80-hour weeks and you haven't seen the kids or anything like that, and you're in there for the 14th hour that day, that's where arguments happen. And, we always hear those stories of these two coaches can't even talk anymore and stuff. And I'm like, that's how that happens. It can be difficult. It can be stressful.
Yeah. To me, I think the answer to the question I asked is I don't think there's any way he goes and hires another one. And I think it's mainly for this. You brought up a really good reason that this is Tyler Bowen's second year now. So he's got a better feel for things. But also, you bring in Arthur Smith, who is very heavy on the offensive line, right? Former offensive lineman, offensive line coach, all those things. So previously, you had Brian Hartline. I mean, doesn't know much about offensive line, right?
Yes.
Receivers coach. I wouldn't say that he had a lot of input on what the offensive line does and right how to, protection schemes and all those things. That's one of the things that's talked about in this early winter workout buzz and kind of what Arthur Smith is doing. Speaking of, and that's one of the first things Arthur Smith is doing is getting with Julian Sain and the offensive line and making sure they work together the best that they can. Helping technician wrote on the board. That was one of the things that drew Ryan Day to Arthur Smith is how much better the quarterback and offensive line worked together at the Steelers in those 2 years. A lot of people want to point to a lot of negative things about the Steelers offense. Well, Ryan Day thought he found something that was very impressive to him. And that's what Arthur Smith did in that. That's what he's now doing inside the Woody. He's there. He's working, going in, watching film with all these players, pointing out the bad things, pointing out the good things, and really diving in with Julian Sam and really diving in with this offensive line. One more thing to add to that note is helping technician brought up Arthur's scheme, right? His run scheme and how he likes to run his offensive line is a more aggressive type style for the offensive line, meaning most of the time they're going to go out and they're going to be the aggressor in the scheme that Arthur Smith is building right now. And that can build some confidence for these players when they're going on the attack. They're not backing up and waiting for somebody to come to them. They're going out and finding somebody, putting hands on them and moving them. So it was a great nugget by helping technician. I know I said a lot there, but speak to Arthur Smith. What do you think the conversations are like between Julian Sain, the offensive line? What are some things he might be trying to teach these guys as far as working together as one solid unit?
Well, the first thing I noticed was he got hired, and it wasn't just maybe a couple days later. The reports were he had already watched every game, had broken it down, had told the players and Coach Day, here's what I saw, here's what I would change, that type of stuff. And that tells me something. Some coaches aren't huge on film. We all watch it. We all watch a lot of it. Some guys live it. That tells me he lives it. Like that's what he does. And also, I thought this with Jim Knowles, and I'm starting to think this with Coach Smith. I think he's the smartest guy in the room. I think he's an incredibly intelligent person. And so, from the few things I'm hearing, that just I get that feeling. So I think he sits down with the O line and says, "Okay, here's where the breakdown was. How are we going to fix this?" And then he's explaining, "Here's how I want to fix it." He's probably even showing film from the Steelers or Tennessee or whatever, and saying, "Here's how I want this to look. Here's how we're going to do this." And when you're a Montgomery or a Daniels or whatever, and you're watching NFL players do this with success, you're going to believe in it. It's
Yeah, that's a
you're
good
not going to
point.
doubt the man. And so that is a huge thing there. And then when you sit down with your quarterback, and I like some of the reports where he was basically, uh, I don't want he wasn't getting on them, but you're being graded. And guess what? There were some
Yeah.
plays you messed up on. And so he's letting you know about it. And I'd be very curious to see, is he a screamer or not? I think some coaches are, some aren't. I kind of am when I coach. And so I always know if I scream at a kid on the negative, I got to scream at him on the positive at least twice as much. Um, I not all college coaches are that way, because there's a dude
Yeah.
behind you. So if you don't want to do what he's yelling at you about, that's fine. He'll bring in the next guy. Same thing in the NFL. They'll cut you. So if you're not going to do what he wants you to do, you're going to lose your paycheck. So a lot of different ways of getting things done. So I'm very curious as to see what kind of coach he is. I need to look him up on YouTube and see if he speaks and stuff. Me being an O-line, D-line guy, those guys are always kind of rough around the edges and everything.
Yeah.
My favorite O-line coach to ever listen to was Howard Mudd. You're going to get a cuss word about every third word out of Howard Mudd when he's coaching. You listen to him at a clinic, you're probably going to get one every 8 or 10 words. So he's there. There's a lot of different personality types there. So I'm very interested to see what kind of personality he has. Because Coach Day is not a screamer, but he is very intense. I think you see that during games. He just has that look.
Yeah.
So how does that mesh together? I don't know. And that also goes to you asking about the third O-line coach. You got to run that through Arthur Smith also.
Yeah.
That's not necessarily just a Ryan Day call anymore. It's, when it was Hartline, I think if Day said, "I'm giving you 3 O-line coaches," Hartline said, "Okay, whatever." Now you're bringing in an NFL guy who's coached for years. You're not going to tell him, "Hey, I just threw this guy on your staff." It doesn't work that way. So,
Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I love the hire. And I think me and you talked about this as well, that, when it was Brian Hartline, Ryan Day's the one that taught him how to call plays. So it's just like,
yeah.
are you really going to question your teacher? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Are you going to be able to stand up and say, "No, teacher, I know you're wrong." Now, I know it's a business, they're men, it's their
Mm-hmm.
jobs, but I mean, they're still people. And that
Mm-hmm.
dynamic definitely came into play. So I love that about the hire. You also mentioned how much work that he put in before he ever got to the building. Well, right, that lines up with what Matt Patricia did last year, because, right, what I was told, the second he got in the dude started reorganizing. He completely rewrote or re-evaluated and organized their play system on the computer, right?
Yes.
He said it in
Yes.
an interview. Players were telling me about it. The dude stay in his office hours redoing. I forget the system that they use. I forget what it's called. You probably know what it's called, but I guess they redid it. It was way more organized,
Mm-hmm.
better, like that. So you want to talk about it. And when he was getting hired, Arthur Smith, same with Matt Patricia, very organized, very precise in what he likes to do. That was the information, the intel I got on him before the hire. So those type of coaches, right, seem to work out well. A couple other things on what kind of is going on inside the Woody is that, rest assured, guys, when Arthur Smith was hired, people got a little bit worried, man. Like, hey, we got
Mm-hmm.
JJ Smith, we got Chris Henry Jr. coming in. We don't need to be running all these tight ends all the time. We don't need to be just running the ball. Man, we got to give it to our receivers. Well, the offense is going to run around JJ Smith, right? With
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Smith. He's a very smart coach. He understands those things. Go back and look at the Titans. What was it? A.J. Brown and Derrick Henry,
Yes.
right? He really utilized those players very, very well. Well, you got J.J. Smith and Bo Jackson on this roster. So you saw when he had the players and the chess pieces to put in place, he put them in the right spot. And Derrick Henry had his best year as a running back in the NFL under Arthur Smith. And so did,
Yes.
what was it, Ryan Tannehill, their quarterback. And then
Mhm.
also, you look at the Steelers this year, they didn't have those pieces to use, right? They were dead last in paying on the offensive side of the ball. Dead
Yes.
last. They were 32nd in the NFL, I believe, if that's how many teams are in there. They were dead last,
Mhm.
and people are going to complain that Arthur Smith got a team to the playoffs that was dead last in paying the offensive side of the ball. I think
Yeah.
he did pretty darn well. The other thing is when Chip Kelly came in, we heard that he would get on Brian Hartline if the receivers did not block.
Yes.
I feel like the receivers did decent at blocking this year, but I feel like every single year you could say, hey, the receivers need to block better. Like, I feel
Mhm.
like that's something that is always said, no matter what. I feel like I always hear that. We'll see. But supposedly, Arthur Smith and Chip Kelly share that sentiment that all 11 players will be held responsible for the run game, including the wide receivers. Any takes on that?
Yeah. I've seen both sides of that. When you are an O line geared guy, you do not take it well when a receiver does not block well.
Yeah.
When you're blocking a 320-pound guy and you see him not blocking a 185-pound guy, that's a problem. And that gets brought up in films and in meetings and stuff. That you point that out, you're going to say something and let him know it. I also completely understand that when you're the receivers coach and you are a Brian Hartline, your job is to get kids to the NFL because that then makes your job easier because you're going to keep coming back. Your recruiting is going to get easier. You're going to get better receivers. And that's what Hartline established. He kept bringing in studs because the kids he did have kept going to the NFL. So it's easy to get Jeremiah Smith to come in when he's watched all these other guys. I mean, we just watched Jackson Smith last night win the Super Bowl. So you better believe he's at South Florida now telling all of his recruits that. So I understand that he then says, yeah, you can block and everything, but guess what? You ain't going to get drafted in the first round for your blocking. You're going to get drafted for your playmaking ability. So there's give and take, and that's kind of where Coach Day needs to step in and find that happy medium where the coordinator and the O-line coach need those guys to block, and he also needs to understand that as a receivers coach, you're trying to get them to make plays. So it's tough, especially in college. A lot of egos there.
Yeah, that's an interesting side to that conversation I've never really thought about because for me, not being super involved in the NFL like I am college football, like I don't dive super deep into it, I would have just assumed that, if you got film as a wide receiver, let's say you got a first round draft grade as a wide receiver, but your film shows you're not willing to block, I feel like that would hurt you. But what you're saying is it doesn't necessarily, right? Teams
Yeah.
fall in love with that first round catching speed, route running
Yes.
ability way more than I do the blocking in the NFL, which makes sense. And it makes sense why you see so many big time wide receivers, right, look like they just take some plays off on the blocking front. I can
Yeah.
say that about several Buckeye wide receivers that I've watched come through here, several first rounders, every one of them, right? I've watched plays where I'm like, dang, man. But like you said, that goes back to, I guess, that culture conversation as well. Like, what type of culture do you have in this locker room? What type of
Mhm.
brotherhood is being formed? Like, you're going to hold each other accountable as far as on a team level. If you're really selfish and you're a wide receiver, you're right, right? If those things are true, you're not going to care too much about the blocking. What you're going to care about is, am I getting signed in the first round or not? Not so much winning a national title, right? Which is a whole nother show, a whole nother recruits anymore? You know what I mean? That's an interesting question that I heard asked quite some time ago, and I jotted it down. I was like, dude, I'd love to dive into this and
Mhm.
ask people, but I doubt you get the truth very much. So yeah, a lot of interesting things to dive into with Arthur Smith and the dynamic of the team and what Coach Day is doing this offseason. We'll see if we get an announcement from Matt Patricia. We'll see, if we get an announcement from Larry Johnson. He's got a contract as well. His contract is up, so a new contract needs put in front of him. He needs to get that thing signed. We'll see how that operates. But diving into these last couple little notes on some specific players inside the Woody, we had a lot of portal additions. Mark Pantoni and Ryan Day both talked about, hey, you can't just go out and get the best player at that position. That's not how the portal works. You got to bring a player in that's also going to fit the culture. They need to do their job at a high level with the level you need them to, and they need to be able to fit into this culture. They need to want to be here. Well, it sounds like Terry Moore and Earl Little are leading the front as far as the portal players in that regard. The safety from Duke and the safety from Florida State, they have already begun to take a leadership role in the workouts and seem to be killing it. Really good things coming out of there about Terry Moore. People worried about his injury. It seems that he is operating at a full health capacity, which is a really good thing as well. James Smith, Quay Rasol, they seem to have a little extra get up in their step related to Matt Patricia and his ability to take players like a K-Mac or an Arvell Reese and use their skill set so well that they get put in the first round. You know what I mean? K-Mac, Arvell Reese, right? Matt Patricia was able to see what they're good at. Well, James Smith and Quay Rasol, both five-star recruits, both very athletic. They have not lived up to that yet. Let's see if Matt Patricia can scheme them up properly and use their athleticism to maybe boost their draft grade. They seem to have a big pep in their step. Last two players that I've got something on here is Jalen McClain and Jermaine Matthews seem to have stepped things up in a very big way. Obviously, Jalen McClain, starting safety beside Caleb Downs, going into his junior year, had a great year, has got to step up because Caleb Downs is leaving. He is fully aware of that and is taking a big leadership role so far. And Jermaine Matthews, like they say, VB, this is money year, man. This is it for him.
That is exactly what I was thinking. That those guys that you're mentioning, especially Matthews, it's the money year.
Yeah.
And as we see, this is becoming a business more and more every year. So, yeah, when you're in your third year, and especially you're a DB type of kid or receiver, any of those skill guys, that, 3 years and you're gone if at all possible. So, it's a money year for him. And that is the kind of thing that those NFL guys do ask coaches about. What is he doing when the cameras aren't on him? They can watch all the film they want, but what they need to trust Ryan Day when he tells them, what is he like in the weight room? What is he like in your meetings? When your meeting's over, does he stick around and watch more film? Is he stick around and talk to his coach, or is he the first one out the door? Those are the questions that they ask. Ultimately the NFL drafts on talent. But when talent is even, they look at that other stuff. That's why Jamarcus Russell gets taken with the number 1 pick. They never, Johnny Manziel gets drafted in the first round. They didn't ask those questions enough. So in the NFL, those are huge things. So the extra stuff like that, it really is. So I'm lucky enough to know a couple of players that I worked with that went on to play in the NFL, and the amount of work that they just didn't, and they played at major college level. And so the amount of work that they had to do when they got the NFL is, it's just different. Like, we saw in the Super Bowl yesterday, we were talking earlier, that tackle for the Patriots, that dude is the number 4 pick in the draft, clear consensus number 1 offensive lineman. He looked like a high school kid last night out there. It's a huge difference when you go from college to the NFL, man. It is a big difference. So those things do matter. That's for sure.
Dude, I'm glad you brought that up because I was going to do a little bonus content here and ask you about the Super Bowl, but specifically that conversation we were having beforehand because, right, obviously the Patriots offensive line was good enough to get them to the Super Bowl, so they had gotten the job done. They'd obviously showed, right, throughout the season some spots where there was questions there. Hey, is this offensive line going to hold up? But it held up enough to get them to the game, right? Buckeye fans can feel a similar type of feeling towards our offensive line. Got us to the Big Ten title game, had a bad game, didn't work out. Got us to the Miami game, playoff game, had a bad game, didn't work out. You're watching that New England Patriots offensive line, number 4 pick in the draft, Will Campbell, right? Another rookie beside him, as you stated earlier, didn't look all that hot, yet they were good enough to get to the Super Bowl. So kind of dive into that a little bit, connect it to the Buckeye offensive line, and maybe give us Buckeye fans a little relief knowing that, hey, our offensive line didn't go in the portal and get any guys, but hey, this unit coming back does have the ability to give us a shot at the national title.
Yeah. Well, and everybody loves the new shiny object. So when you get that portal player or that 4 or 5-star recruit, they're great until they play, and then everything changes. So we watching that game yesterday. Those 2 rookies out there on the left side. I think, man, as after the season is now over with, I'm like, what the job that Mike Vrabel did to get that team to the Super Bowl with an offense that, there was a rookie Buckeye running back there. I don't know if I've seen an offense that youthful ever, and I definitely never seen it in the Super Bowl. I mean, a second-year quarterback, a first-year running back, 2 rookies on the offensive line, that's unheard of to make it to the Super Bowl. And they got exposed for it. Seattle's a great team, great coaching staff. They had 2 weeks to prepare, watch all that film, and they knew what they were going up against. And then I know I read today that the quarterback for New England, is it Drake May, had to get a pain killer shot in his shoulder to be able to play.
You bet.
So if I'm the offensive coordinator for the Patriots, I'm just sitting there thinking, what are we going to do? And it played out in the game. Vrabel didn't take risk. He was more than happy to go into that halftime down 9-0 or 12-0 because he knew, they weren't rolling with much on offense. So when you bring that back to the Buckeyes, what was out there in the portal to begin with on the offensive line? We talked about the one tackle, I think, that ended up at LSU and was commanding $5 million or whatever. Other than him, who were the, guys that it was like, well, this guy's going to start right away? I didn't see any other names that were like that, where I thought, oh, they need to grab that guy and pencil him in here. Ohio State currently has, I think we named 3 guys last week who could replace a guy that's a returning starter, from this past season. So whether it's, the Low kid, Moore, they're trying to figure out how to get those guys on the field, and they returned 4 of the 5 starters. So Gabe Van Sickle started a game. Padilla came in for him and played great. There's a lot there, and I didn't think there was anything in the portal that was worth the risk or the money to come in and replace any of those guys, So, yeah, I mean, when Daniels came in, were we all excited about that one? No, everybody was excited about the kid from Rice.
Yeah.
And, and who played and who didn't. And that's what I mean. We just don't know. What that taught me is I knew nothing about who Rice was playing. And you watch that film, and I'm like, oh, he's huge. He's mauling kids, this, and that. Well, everybody looks great on any bad plays in there. So, if you're Ohio State, which they still took him though, but I want to see that film of him against, a quality opponent. How did he do and stuff? So, I didn't think there was anything in the market, in the portal, that was going to make the Ohio State offensive line significantly better.
Yeah. You look at this offensive line we brought out there this year. 4 of our starting offensive line were on that national title team. So people point to that. You can use that as a good, like, hey, clearly the talent is there. You could lose that as a bad, like, yo, hey, what the heck happened? Was this coaching staff up to date? Was the scheme up to date? I mean, let's point towards the fact that 4 of those guys won us a national title. So clearly, as players, they're good enough to get the job done. There was something else, right, going on in this situation. But also, you look at Austin Saraveld going out playing tackle for the first time. He played guard last year. You look at Philip Daniels coming in, playing right tackle at The Ohio State. That's a pretty big change as well, right? So you had those situations, and then a Tegra that struggled. A lot of things were going on as we went over previous shows several times. Long story short, with the addition of Arthur Smith, with one more year in the weight room, these guys are going together, and with the essentially 8 guys on the offensive line, probably stretch it to 9 that are probably going to be battling for positions in this offseason. I
Mm-hmm.
think the Buckeyes have 5 offensive linemen out of those 8 or 9 that can come together and make a national title offensive line for the Buckeyes next
Mm-hmm.
year. But yeah, all things going well. Ryan Day still adding to the coaching staff. Still some adjustments to be made there. We're gonna see. Is there going to be an announcement with Matt Patricia, Larry Johnson? Are they going to go get another offensive line coach? There's still some moves to be made, but things are moving forward inside the Woody with the workouts, the new coaches going along. Arthur Smith, as VB coach brought up, already putting in hours and hours and hours in organization, meeting with these guys, watching film,
Mm-hmm.
breaking these things down, getting with the offensive line, and knowing that JJ Smith is the center of this offense. So that should give some relief to Buckeye fans. VB coach, actually, let's get to these super chats before I forget
Mm-hmm.
real fast. There's only one of them. Doodah man, thanks for being a member for 14 months. Steely, thanks for the $1.99. Good to see VB coach back on Scoop and Buckeye boys. Yes,
Thank you.
hopefully we can keep him around as long as he's got time. He's pretty busy. Barely made the show tonight. He's pretty busy tonight, but we'll see when we get off here. Try to get him back on Monday again. But VB coach, any final words about what we talked about? Anything new? What you got for us?
Just that, I think the next month's going to be interesting to see how everything gets finalized, because from here they're now thinking spring ball. And this is
Yeah.
probably the most excited I've been for spring ball in a while. To see you got a new offensive coordinator. How is that going to look? You can say you're going to feature Jeremiah Smith. What's that going to look like? If it's me, I'm moving him around. I don't want him on the outside all the time where teams know where he's going to be. I want to move him. How many tight ends are we going to see? And I know everybody goes nuts over that, but watch the NFL games. I'm constantly seeing 2 and 3 tight end sets and stuff. So the Steelers were constantly in a 2 tight end look. They had the one kid that was like 6'7", 285 playing tight end. So what is that going to look like with this guy? I think that's going to be interesting. One thing I would tell you is he's well known for his shifting. He's going to line up in one thing and shift to another. And so what is that going to look like? How quickly are the players going to pick that up? What players are going to sit out the spring with injuries, where you're like,
Yeah.
I'm starting such and such. So I'm going to get my shoulder worked on and I don't need this spring. I don't know if that's a great idea this year. So a lot of different moving parts. I think with the Matt Patricia thing, the reason I would make some kind of announcement is to help with recruiting, because recruits want to know, is that the guy I'm going to be playing for? And like I said, I don't know what kind of recruiter he is, because he's never really done college ball to where he's been asked to recruit like this. I would think it would be pretty cool to walk in there with a couple of Super Bowl rings on your hand and talk to a player. I think that would make things easy for you. So that'll all be interesting. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, Matt Patricia's on the road recruiting. Seems to love it. I've talked to a couple recruits that have interacted with him, and I asked them that specific question about, man, what's that like? And they get pretty excited. They say, man, they get super. The 2 I asked said that they were very nervous when Matt Patricia came in the room at first, but quickly overcame that with his presence. Seems to be very joyful, smiling all the time type of individual. So that's good to hear. You talked about players sitting out. I'd say the position group that's going to be most interesting to watch in the spring is the running back position, because Bo Jackson and Isaiah West are out. They're out with shoulder surgeries. Those were
Yeah.
supposed to be our number 1 and 2. But Jacoby Jackson, Turbo Rogers, and Legend Bay are coming in. Favorite Key
Right.
as well. So we'll see if those guys right, can take a spot. So as you said earlier, right, if you're not willing to do something as a player, well, in the same regard, if you get injured as a player, that there's somebody behind you waiting to take that spot, and they could take advantage of those reps and potentially beat you out for your job. So it's going to be very interesting. But yes, I will have to agree. I am very excited for spring ball. I'm very excited for those conversations with, some people about what's going on inside the Woody, the spring game, all those things, because we're talking about two, previous NFL head coaches going head to head during the spring, and Arthur
Yes.
Smith and Matt Patricia
That's a
battling
great
each
point.
other.
Great
I don't
point.
know if that's ever happened in college football before, but I bet you could sell some serious tickets to some of these spring practices just to watch, man. I'd buy a couple of them. But guys, listen, appreciate you guys for watching every night like you always do. VB Coach, give you one more opportunity to respond. Anything I said, any final goodbyes?
Yeah, just appreciate everybody following along with us, and I appreciate the comments. Last time I didn't know how to even bring the chat up on my screen. I figured that out way too late. So this time I'm watching it, and I see that my sister's even on there. So, yeah,
Ooh.
so interesting. So she's on the scoop
Yeah.
too. I don't think many people know she's my sister, but so yeah, there's people on there I know, that's for sure. So
I posted a short. I sent you the shorts I posted of our last show.
yes.
I think she posted under one of them and said, "That's my brother." Oh, wow, look at that. I've seen her in the chat before, I do believe. So
Mhm.
shout out to the sister.
Yeah.
But yeah, chat again. Appreciate the heck out of you guys. Love you guys. This Thursday, we got Kellen Weimer coming on the show, offensive lineman in the 2027 class. Going to be a good one. But Friday, we got Zion Grady coming on, potential starting defensive end for the Buckeyes this upcoming season. Been chatting with him. He's very excited to come on the show. So make sure you are here Friday around 8:15 p.m. Show him serious love, guys. It's pretty cool to get a player of his caliber on the show in the middle of his workouts and stuff, taking the time out of his day to come on here, talk to Buckeye Nation. He was on last year, so hopefully we can continue this tradition and keep getting him on every year. But need your guys' support in doing that. You can support by hitting that like button, hitting the subscribe button as well. Hit the alert bell also. And man, after this, if you guys are watching live, if you could maybe spend an extra 2 minutes afterwards when the stream ends, post a comment down below the video. You guys are commenting on the live stream, but it also helps once it's not live to comment below. Helps with the YouTube algorithm to get the video out there more. Appreciate everything you guys do. Go Buckeyes. Love you guys. OH.
Yo.